Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we are discussing the Emperor's presence across the Great Rift. General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. If there's one defining factor that's guided the Imperium's fate for the past 10,000 years, if there's one thing above any other that has truly held back the dark, rather than the Astartes, the Imperial Navy, the Astra Militarum, it has to surely be the Emperor of Mankind. Even with his ascension to the Golden Throne, it has been his light that has guided the way, a literal and figurative beacon for the people of mankind. It is the Imperium's faith in him that has denied the ruinous powers, for he is the God Emperor. In this current age of darkness for the galaxy, faith has never been more important. With the flood of the Immaterium, the boundaries between the warp and the material galaxy have become frayed. The minions of the ruinous powers walk and manifest in numbers never seen, and the reach of the gods of chaos knows no bounds. Yet the same tragedy has also perhaps given rise to the Imperium's greatest hope, for the psychic awakening of these frayed boundaries has quite possibly unleashed the God Emperor. Faith in him has become a psychic weapon in many ways. Outbreaks of the Emperor's power, risings of his saints, are becoming more and more frequent, and where faith in him is strongest, miracles are being seen, demons eviscerated. As such, the forces that have the strongest faith have arguably become the Imperium's best defense, none more so than the Adepta Sororitas, the very symbol of faith in the God Emperor. Their hymns, their prayers, their devotion and righteous fury is anathema to the spawn of the ruinous powers, and we have seen countless times now the effect their mere presence can have upon the battlefield. Within the Dawn of Fire novel The Gate of Bones, we even saw that they can become visibly enshrouded in the golden light of the Emperor. Canoness Veritas was coming towards him, firing all the while, her sisters behind her, and they were singing. Lifting his groggy head, Lucerne beheld a nimbus of soft light surround them as they chanted their praise to the God Emperor. It grew in brilliance, and he thought that he could see a tall warrior behind them, almost indistinct in the glare, his eyes brighter than suns. He threw up an arm to protect his eyes. There was a scream halfway between a human shout and the grinding of gears. Then the sisters were helping him up, and the obliterator was a twisted hunk of smoking metal. "The Emperor hears us," said Veritas. "Praise be," mumbled Lucerne. Now, what is the Emperor? What has he become? That's a conversation for another day. But it's clear here, and in many other scenarios, the Emperor's power does appear to bless those when they reach out. And in particular, the Adepta Sororitas appear to be able to feel his presence. And we absolutely received the best example of this, probably ever, in the novel Pilgrims of Fire by Justin D. Hill. Here, a force of sisters managed to make the perilous journey across the Great Rift into Imperium Nihilus, as part of an advance party for Indomitus Fleet Quintus. And their first reaction immediately, is to realise they can no longer feel the God Emperor. The sisters gathered in the Great Prayer Hall. It was a sombre place, But what was most shocking was that they were alone. Profoundly alone. All of them felt it, but it hit the sisters hardest of all. They were beyond the grace of the God Emperor. Each of the sisters felt the loss in their own way. Some knelt in prayer, even though they were beyond the Emperor's hearing. Others wept. The younger ones looked at Palatine Albreda, and she tried to show courage, but she barely had the strength to lead them in prayer. The shutters to the Repentia cells were locked, but from high up, they could hear all the screams and moans of pain. Heloise felt it as strongly as the others. She felt as though she had lost a limb. Her voice was a croak as she ran through her prayers. One by one, the sisters took each other's hands. They had passed beyond the eye of the God Emperor. It was as if they had tumbled into hell. Now this is incredibly interesting. In the past, we have seen how the Astronomicon wasn't simply a beacon of light for the Imperium, how it was never simply a navigational tool, but also a measure of the Emperor's presence, providing an unknown sense of reassurance across the Imperium to its people, which is why the fear was so overwhelming in the days following Cadia's fall, with the Astronomicon going out. As we know, the Astronomicon can't breach the Great Rift, so is it merely the Astronomicon the sisters can't feel or sense? Is it that same loss they feel as in the days of blinding? Or is it something more? I think undoubtedly that must have something to do with it. Suddenly not having that presence or figurative comfort blanking the Astronomicon provides would surely be just as profound to the sisters, if not more so. And the clue is most certainly in the line, profoundly alone. All of them felt it, but it hit the sisters hardest of all. They were beyond the grace of the Emperor. That they all felt it, that sounds remarkably like when the Astronomicon went out. If we compare that to the description we received in the Watchers of the Throne series novel, The Emperor's Legion, by Chris Raitt. I felt dislocated. The Astronomicon was a literal lighthouse for the Navigator mutants. But for the rest of us, it also had a grounding function. Only with its withdrawal could we understand just how much its presence had been subliminally detected. A faint aura of assurance amid a galaxy that was tearing itself apart. And that explained the madness. As the command lifter pulled further out into the maw of the world city, we could see the enormous crowds spilling out onto the causeways and raised plazas. They were incredible, living seas of humanity, streaming out of every crevice. They clustered into the choked spaces like locusts, and their massed cries of desperation were audible even over the drone of the lifter engines. I remembered my encounter with the far smaller crowd only a few days ago. I remembered the nervousness of the mortal commander, the sense of impending violence in the air. Now all that was swept away, replaced by naked desperation on such a scale that it almost defied belief. Again here that line. Only with its withdrawal could we understand just how much its presence had been subliminally detected. The effect, the sense of loss and absence, feels remarkably similar in both situations to me. The sisters, so immersed in their faith and worship of the God Emperor, would surely be more aware of his presence via the Astronomicon, be more sensitive to it, navigators aside of course. And so, with the Astronomicon being unable to penetrate the Great Rift, that does help to explain why so much fear has gripped the northern half of mankind's empire. However, does that mean the Emperor's presence can't reach Imperium Nihilus at all? Does it mean these psychic sightings of his power are limited to the Astronomicon, and so perhaps in some way are connected? Well, no. Within the days of the Noctis Aeterna, the days of blinding, when the Astronomicon was out entirely for the entire galaxy, the Emperor was still able to commune and guide Saint Celestine within the novel Shroud of Night by Andy Clark, which is a read and story I've raved about over the years. Here, the Emperor informs Celestine of an infiltrated Alpha Legion warband, and to assist them in claiming a beacon of his power, knowing it's better off with them rather than the fellow Khorne and Slaanesh invaders. And 2, with the sisters within Pilgrims of Fire, despite being across the rift within Imperium Nihilus, feeling that overwhelming sense of loss, they are still later in battle able to feel his presence returned. Her foe had every advantage: height, size, strength, and fury. But she had the God Emperor, and she believed. You betrayed your vows, she roared at him, and he laughed at her. Ignorant woman, vows are not chains. She parried a fourth blow and stepped in, the sword lancing in through his guard and slicing through the cabling at his gut. Viscous coolant splattered over his thighs, and he was so bent on killing her that he barely slowed. He chopped down at her again and again, like an axeman hacking at a lump of timber. Her power blade crackled and sizzled as the stains about his waist grew darker, and his movements started to slow. He lumbered forwards, struggling to keep control of his suit as its system started to shut down. With satisfaction, she saw him realize that he was a dead man walking. With a roar of righteousness she swung. The blade sliced through his pauldron and into his neck. His head fell backwards while his torso tumbled towards her, splashing her armor in arterial blood. She looked at the remains of her foe and felt a surge of pride rise through her. She had met and matched a real Blade Master, and more than that, I felt him, Heloise hissed. She gripped Morgandre's arm. He is with us. Can you feel him? So, despite the Astronomicon being unable to pierce the rift, to aid the terrified and beset people of Imperium Nihilus, it's clear the Emperor is, in some ways at least, still able to reach in to Imperium Nihilus. Here, in the fury of battle, enabling the sister to overpower and defeat a traitor Astarte. And this is just one example of what could be many playing out across the rift. Whether the extremities of battle pushing that belief of faith to such strengths, it enables the Emperor to see them, or the mental exertion and devotion establishes a stronger psychic connection, who knows? Maybe it's just the overwhelming, smothering forces of chaos beyond the rift. Right now we don't have all the answers, but it's clear, despite the Astronomicon not being able to penetrate the Great Rift, the Emperor can. It's clearly limited in a way across the rift it isn't within Imperium Sanctus, but the Emperor can reach them. There's one line between the sisters that really sums it all up perfectly. I still miss his presence, she said, but we shall have to be more perceptive. The God Emperor has proved his grace extends across the whole galaxy. He is with us yet. The Astronomicon doesn't reach Imperium Nihilus. The Emperor's presence can't be felt at all times, but he is there. He is able to reach across the rift. How it works, how much effort it takes him, all of these answers are yet to be seen. But while faith exists within Imperium Nihilus, there is still hope. And the God Emperor still protects. But as always everyone, what do you think? Are the outbreaks of the Emperor's power connected to the Astronomicon in some way? Does it perhaps have something to do with the shattering of the Emperor's mind? Do you feel that great sense of loss the sisters feel across the rift, and all of humanity for that matter, is merely the effect of the Astronomicon, as we saw in the Days of Blinding? And why do you feel the Emperor is able to still work across the rift when the Astronomicon can't? Considering his acts are fewer and far between, how or what do you feel is needed for him to be felt and to act? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.